To finish my playthrough of Crash Bandicoot 3, I thought I'd talk about some of the unused and early development content from the game. Now, most of this is going to come from the original PS1 version and not the Insane Trilogy. I'll talk about the Insane Trilogy's unused content when I finish its version of Crash 1. It is fitting that we're finishing the Crash game about time travel by going back in time. So there's not a ton of unused content in the original game, but there are a few interesting things. All of this information comes from the cutting room floor, by the way. So firstly, there are unused textures for death route platforms for the future and prehistoric levels. None of these levels have death routes in the final game. Speaking of death routes, the composer for these games, Josh Mansell, composed death route themes for every type of level, even those that didn't get death routes in the final game, including the vehicle levels. Of these, the only one that's been posted online is the death route theme for motorbike levels. So have a listen. Via a quote from the composer himself, it's unlikely these levels were ever planned to have death routes, and these themes were more composed just for completeness' sake. Although interestingly, there's no evidence of a medieval death route theme ever being composed or planned, so those levels we know never would have had one. Another piece of music composed by Josh Mansell that goes unused is this early take for the underwater levels. This one ended up being frequently used as a placeholder track in the alpha version of the game, but I'll get to that later. Not exactly unused, but like a lot of games, most of the objects, enemies, and the like have internal names in the game's code, and the designers had a lot of fun with these ones. This all stemmed from the fact that in Crash 1, the lab assistant enemies were named in the code OBJ_ASS, short for assistant, but you see where this is going. Let's just say that in Crash 3, Naughty Dog took this and ran with it, and all the lab assistant enemies have very vulgar internal names that I will not be sharing here. Another interesting element to the internal names is the object that denotes where Crash starts in a level is called OBJ_Willy, a reference to when the character was originally planned to be called Willy the Wombat. But for some reason, the starting position for Road Crash, and only Road Crash, is instead called OBJ_Willy-U. So apparently even the developers hated Road Crash. That's all from the final release of the game, but let's go back further in time. 2 months before the game's final release, there was a preview version referred to as the Alpha Demonstration Prototype. This one was eventually leaked online in October 2019, and it reveals a lot of interesting things about the game's levels that got changed during development. Now, I won't be covering aspects of this version like unfinished death routes, glitches, the camera panning a bit too far in Orient Express and showing a bit of out of bounds, and unfinished or placeholder music, because all of that obviously was not going to be in the final game. But regarding the major differences, let's start with the character icons in the Warp Room. The ones from the alpha version are very different, and those for characters that appeared in Crash 2 were based on the Crash 2 icons. And also LOL Entropy's prototype icon. Another general change was that Sapphire relics were originally called Silver. While the progression Silver, Gold, Platinum does make sense, considering Silver and Platinum are very similar colours, I can understand why they changed this. Now onto the levels themselves, and I'll be going through the ones with major changes in order. Firstly, Under Pressure, and by extension Deep Trouble, had the pufferfish enemies originally being purple. This is another change that I can definitely understand. The purple pufferfish are a little bit hard to see against the background, and in a one-hit point wonder platformer, enemies do need to be very obvious, so I approve of the change to red. Next up is Boneyard, or rather Dynamite, because it and the later prehistoric level had their level names swapped in this version. One of the more interesting elements of the alpha demonstration, in my opinion, is the Triceratopses in the chase sequences originally had a caveman lab assistant riding them. If the same Triceratops chased Crash more than once, the lab assistant would fall off the back and start clinging onto the Triceratops' face for the second sequence. Naughty Dog even has concept art of the lab assistant riders. This would have been a really funny and characterful detail, so it's a shame it didn't make it into the final game. This might have been cut for being too intensive on the hardware animation-wise, though I kind of wish the Insane Trilogy restored it. This isn't from the alpha demonstration, but there's early footage from trailers that implies Baby T would have actually been in Boneyard, and would have been usable for the chase sequences. Making Waves was called Aye Matey in this version of the game. Tomb Time did not originally have a gem route. The purple gem path was originally just a hard path that would automatically be locked out to you if you took too long to get there. Although with a bit of slide jumping, you could still quite easily access it from the back entrance. Dynamite, or rather Boneyard in this version, had a change implying the secret exit was originally supposed to be at the end of the yellow gem route. On the other side of the stack of iron boxes, instead of a pile of lives, is a portal with the internal name OBJ Warp Out Secrets. However, there's no evidence of Aegopus Rex existing in this version, so it's unclear where this would have led to. Deep Trouble has the blue gem instead of the red gem. And the next level, High Time, has the red gem instead of the purple gem. There was one other change to High Time as well. Remember this area of monkey bars at the end of the death routes? In the alpha demonstration, there's a sword thrower here, who for some reason isn't there in the final game. I wonder if this is because the death animation wouldn't interact properly with Crash hanging. I wonder if this was actually in the game, if it would have given the pull legs up function an actual use, like it had, albeit only briefly, in Crash 2. The actual course of Road Crash isn't much different, but it originally had 36 boxes instead of 25, and they're arranged in groups of 4 or in groups of 2 over ramps, in patterns that were very hard to hit with the motorbike, so I'm really glad this was changed. I promise I'm not showing this just so I can show Entropy's amazing alpha portrait again. The fight actually does have a major change. It's hard to see with your screenshots, so I'd recommend looking up footage of it, but his orbs are a lot more difficult to avoid in the alpha version. Their homing is far more aggressive, and they persist for a much longer time. They can even keep up with Crash's double jump. The level Sphinxinator was originally named Sphinxter, after a muscle in the buttocks region. So yeah, this maybe didn't pass the censors. The gem path in this level also requires the green gem instead of the blue one. Bye Bye Blimps has 5 blimps instead of 7, and there are no health restoring balloons. Tomb Raider had the purple gem instead of the blue gem, and there's an extra pit in the area just after the bonus. Gone Tomorrow's gem route required the purple gem instead of the green gem, and its ground was tinted purple instead of green to match. Even in the final version of the game, the elevator leading to this path is still internally called OBJ_elevator purple. The missile launching robots were red with green eyes instead of yellow with red eyes, and they shot fireballs rather than missiles. Orange Asphalt's name is misspelled in this version, and Flaming Passion was known as Crash KABOB. In Mad Bombers, the crates on balloons were not placed throughout the level. Instead, they dropped from the bombers that you shot down. This feature was probably removed from the final version because they can sometimes spawn too low for your machine gun to hit. Now on to the secret warp room. Unlocking it was a little bit different than the final game. It operated on a point system. Silver and gold relics were worth 1 point each, and platinums were worth 2, and you needed to have a total of 25 points to unlock the secret warp room. There are only 3 portals in here: Ski Crazed, Area 51, and Rings of Power. Aegipus Rex and Hot Cocoa weren't in this version, and that's why the total number of relics is 28 instead of 30. Although, in terms of the actual level layout, Ski Crazed is Hot Cocoa in everything but name. It seems like they invented a completely new level for it in the final game, and moved all of Hot Cocoa's data to a different level. Also, in another early build of the game, there's evidence that Hot Cocoa may have originally been planned to be named Secret Ski. Although it sounds to me like that name's a placeholder. There were a few other early demo or prototype versions of the game. One of them was featured as a secret in the original Spyro the Dragon, though apparently only in the American version, and this demo just featured the level Tell No Tales, which had a few differences from the final version. Most notably, remember that life on a ramp at the very end of the level? That's where the crystal was originally. Hacking this demo to find the pause menu strings reveals that at this point in development, Future Frenzy was called Fast Forward and Road Crash was called Roadkill, but those names seem to have changed pretty quickly since they're not in any other build of the game. Overall, the alpha demonstration version of the game is really interesting. So much of the game's level design and the gem locations got changed in only 2 months of development time. And with that, we'll end our journey with Crash Bandicoot 3. It was really fun to revisit this game, both in the past and now. I hope you've enjoyed this shorter series, and I'll see you all next time.